BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Friday, another Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone is well. About 2 months ago on the channel, I interviewed Justin Danneman and talked to him about his book, Ghosts of War, and we were talking a lot about the CIA, other intelligence agencies, declassified operations, and all of those things. And if you're curious about that stuff, I invite you to listen to my episode, The Secrets of Intelligence Agencies, with Justin Danneman as the guest. The cover of his book, Ghosts of War, is in the thumbnail. But the conversation took an interesting turn when we began discussing the Mandela effect. And this is something that I was not very familiar with at the time. And I'm going to play a section of our interview that I did with Justin. Then I'm going to share some observations that I've made about the Mandela effect over the last 2 months. So here's the clip. But Justin, I do have a question for you. And you talked about the Mandela effect, and that is something that I'm not very familiar with. And would you like to share more about that? Because I'm really not up to date on that.
Well, it's named after Nelson Mandela because there's a lot of people that remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, and we are now in the reality in which he was released from prison and didn't die until like 2010 or something like that. Right. I don't know. It's basically people remembering, and it's little things. It could be little things. It could be big things. It could be, the names of things, or the like, for example, is it Jif peanut butter or Jiffy peanut butter? Is it Sex in the City? Is it Sex and the City? Did Darth Vader say, Luke, I am your father? Or does he say, no, I am your father? Was it 4 people in the car when JFK was assassinated? Was it 6 people in the car? So there's minor things, major things. And what makes the Mandela effect so interesting is, I'll remember it one way, but it is a different way. But there's no way for me to prove how I remember it, because the way I remember it is completely wiped. It's not that they went back and changed everything. It's that we shifted it to a different timeline, or something affected reality to which way I remember it is now gone. That's on a different timeline. Okay, though, as far as the examples that you just listed off, I had that experience. I was referring to it as Jiffy peanut butter, and someone was like, it's not Jiffy peanut butter, it's just Jif. And I was like, no, it isn't. It's like, it's Jif, Jif peanut butter. Well, that's what makes the theory so interesting. So when people come at me and they're like, oh, you're into this kind of stuff, like, tell us like a cool one, or tell us like something. The Mandela effect is great because it's you're not going to upset anybody. You're not going to offend anybody. And there's always, I find, one Mandela effect that gets everyone. So they can come at you and say, well, that's just you're just remembering it wrong. That's just you can't count on your memory. But you'll find there's hundreds of them. And there's always one that applies to everyone where they're like, wait a minute, no, I remember it this way. So right. It's a good conversation. Well, yes, because you also brought up Star Wars, and by chance, off the top of your head, do you remember the exact quote from Darth Vader to Luke? I am one of those that says it's Luke, I am your father, but now we exist in the reality that says, no, I am your father. And then the big argument I get is, well, that's just because in Tommy Boy he says, Luke, I am your father. That's why you're remembering it that way. No, I was just about to say, I thought it was, no, Luke, I am your father. I mean, that's how I remember. No, it's either no, I am your father, or it's Luke, I am your father. Those are the sort of the two camps. I remember when they talked about that, though, like it was something like the E! Network, or it was another similar entertainment network, when they said this line of movie dialogue is always misquoted. Like Darth Vader doesn't actually say, Luke, I am your father. And I was like, yeah, he does, right? See? This is what I like about the Mandela effect. There's something that gets everyone. But what I did say, though, about the Jif peanut butter was, I was like, once I actually saw the jar that was JIF, I was like, oh, I must have been thinking of Jiffy Pop, which is a type of popcorn. I mean, the kind with the metal pan that you have to cook on the stove. And, right. I mean, I'm always a little bit naturally skeptical about these things, so I can understand how people can cross memories. And once again, those were the words of Justin Danneman, author of Ghosts of War. And if there are any guests that you would like featured on the program, you can put your ideas in the comment section down below. You can also send them to me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. I also have Facebook and Instagram that are in the description box. And in the box as well, there is a link for BuyMeACoffee.com, BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNid88, and that allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday.
So, over the last 2 months, I've been reading about the Mandela effect and watching videos from time to time on YouTube. And here are some examples of ones that we did not talk about in the interview that I thought were rather fascinating. And there was a YouTube video out there that simply just asked the question about the movie Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin. And there's a scene where Macaulay Culkin's character, Kevin McAllister, is running away from the wet bandits, and he runs into a church. And some people insist that there's a line that says, where one of the characters says, "This place gives me the creeps." And the host of the YouTube channel asked the audience, "Do you remember one of the characters saying, 'This place gives me the creeps'?" We had Home Alone on VHS. When I was growing up, I used to watch it all the time. And I was thinking for a second, I was like, no. But then, as soon as 5 seconds had passed, I began to think, now wait a second, do I remember that one or not? Do I remember that one or not? And all of a sudden, it's almost as if I could picture it in my memory. One of the two characters saying, "This place gives me the creeps," and I began searching for it online, and I just was unable to find it. And I think that that is one of the strongest examples of the Mandela effect, because it actually appears when there is a collective false memory. And my take on the subject is, I think it's just appropriate for the characters. I think that it's just in line with what the characters Harry and Marv would be saying, because they drive up to this church and then they say, "I'm not going in there." And you can see all these types of debates that people are having in the comment section. Some people say that it's Marv, played by Daniel Stern, who said that. Other people say it's Harry, who's played by Joe Pesci, who said the line, "This place gives me the creeps." But this is, again, I think a very good example of a collective false memory, which more or less seems to be the way that people refer to the Mandela effect. What people refer to as a Mandela effect, rather. The next one that I thought was really interesting was, did Britney Spears wear a headset microphone in the music video for Oops, I Did It Again? And I began to think about this because they used to play this on the television all the time. I can't say with 100% accuracy, but I think that it was on the Disney Channel. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and I think we were watching the Disney Channel and they would play Britney Spears' music video. And I began to just think for a second. I was like, no, she did not wear a headset microphone in the music video for Oops, I Did It Again. But the same thing happened with the Home Alone version. 5 seconds passed, and I was like, I can visualize it in my memory. I can now see her in the music video with the headset microphone. I was like, wow, that's so weird. I mean, 5 seconds before that, I thought that she didn't have one. All of a sudden, I'm now, being able to imagine something or as clear as crystal. And I think a lot of that is just what these Mandela effects are. They're things that make sense to us because, as I said with Home Alone, it's what the characters are thinking and feeling, and all of that sounds appropriate for what the dialogue of the characters would have been, right? And with the headset microphone for Britney Spears, she used to wear either a white or tan colored, maybe beige colored headset microphone that was very small. And she is the reason why we call it the Britney mic. That's just what it was known at the time because that's how she would perform. So again, this just seems like something that would have been appropriate for what Britney Spears would have been wearing, but it appears that she was not wearing a headset microphone for the music video, Oops, I Did It Again. Those, I think, are some strong examples of Mandela effects. Now, there are examples of the Mandela effect that I don't quite agree with. Say, for example, there is the famous poem that was written by Clement C. Moore called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." And in one video, someone asked a challenge question, what are the name of Santa's reindeer at the end? And I was like, well, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen and Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. And then the example of the Mandela effect that was presented was somebody said, it's actually Dunder and Blixen. And I'm like, what? No, it's not. Santa's reindeer, Donner and Blitzen, right? And then the example was that in the original version of Clement C. Moore's poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," the reindeer were actually named Dunder and Blixen. And some people in the comment section, whom I can only gather are from Europe, are saying that Dunder and Blixen are actually Dutch for thunder and lightning. And I don't speak German, but someone from Germany once told me that Donner means thunder in German. Maybe it's pronounced a different way because they said Donnerstag is how you say Thursday in German, and that Donner actually means thunder. So I don't think that that's a good example of a Mandela effect because it's not really a collective false memory. Instead, it seems to be to me that that's just an alternate version of the poem, or it's actually the first version. Maybe we know the alternate version. And then this is also carried on in Christmas because there's a very famous Christmas song that is called I'll Be Home for Christmas. And then what's the next song? I'll be home for Christmas. Is it you can count on me or you can plan on me? And it's actually you can plan on me. And as I began to listen to that, just like someone's talking about that as an example of the Mandela effect on YouTube, I just pulled up different variants of the song. Some say you can count on me, some say you can plan on me, and some say both at different times throughout the song. So again, that's not exactly a collective false memory. That is more or less just a different variant of the song. And in the episode that I did with Justin, we were talking about the comment, Luke, I am your father, from Darth Vader. And there's another very famous example of a movie quote, or movie misquote, rather, that we all grew up with. And Anthony Hopkins had perhaps his most famous performance in The Silence of the Lambs, where he was playing Dr. Hannibal Lecter. And the most famous line from the movie is, "Hello, Clarice." And this is just something that is also widely understood, that he doesn't actually say "Hello, Clarice," even though it's widely quoted. He actually just says "Good morning." And I also don't necessarily think that that's a Mandela effect, because I think that that one is a misquote where people are just not exactly having this type of collective false memory. Somebody made it up and then it went on and on and on. Whereas with the one from Home Alone, it appears that just many people are insisting that they've actually heard that in the film. And with Hello Clarice, it's kind of widely understood that that line is not actually in the movie. But the absolute most powerful Mandela effect out of all of these is Fruit of the Loom. Did Fruit of the Loom have a cornucopia on their logo? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And the answer is no, it did not. There is just the fruit. And I was like, no, there was cornucopia. I remember, I can see it. I mean, I've seen it before. I know what it looks like. Other people have drawn out like artistic renditions of what it looked like. I'm like, yes, that's it. That's it. I've seen that one before. Some people insist that that's the Mandela effect, where people begin to have these types of false memories, or they begin to have these types of collective misunderstandings, or it could be something more like what Justin said about how the timelines are actually somewhat malleable. This one I do remember, but I actually heard a fascinating explanation for the Fruit of the Loom cornucopia, and that is that it was not used on their packages, but it was used on their clothing labels from time to time. And also, there were knockoffs, there are counterfeit products, and the counterfeit products used the cornucopia on the label. And if that never existed, I mean, that's just some earth-shattering stuff. And then everything about how just time is fluid and just consciousness is constantly evolving and shape-shifting, all of that is true if the Fruit of the Loom did not have a cornucopia. A different type of Mandela effect example out there where it features the comedian Sinbad, who became famous for a lot of movies in the 90s. I remember Sinbad most for First Kid, actually, because again, we just had it on VHS and I watched it over and over again. And some people insist that he had a movie in the 1990s where he played a genie, but it appears that no such movie actually exists. And I had an explanation for this, but I wasn't able to certify it. And we all know the famous movie Aladdin, right? You know, with Robin Williams playing the genie and The Return of Jafar and Aladdin and the King of Thieves and all of that. And then there was another animated movie about Aladdin, and there was a cover on this, and we had it at our local library, so I would walk past it once a week when we would try to get books. And then in the early 2000s, they made a movie about Sinbad the Sailor. Not Sinbad the comedian, but Sinbad the Sailor. And the covers were somewhat similar. And I thought people must be conflating them. But I wasn't able to find an exact example of the movie that I remember. But I definitely remember that there was an animated Aladdin film that had a cover that was somewhat similar to the Sinbad movie from the early 2000s. But the explanation that's actually been provided by other people is that they're conflating Sinbad actually with Shaquille O'Neal. And some people think that there was a movie called Shazam with Sinbad and he played a genie, or it's just there was a movie where Sinbad played a genie, but that never happened. They're actually thinking about the movie Kazam that featured Shaquille O'Neal playing a genie, which is a really silly and weird movie. And no, the fun fact about that one is I tried to watch that on VHS back when it first came out on video, and that one actually got destroyed in my VCR. Like, the whole TV started going haywire, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I know that this is a technical glitch and a malfunction, but no one is going to believe me because I'm like 8 years old. I'm gonna get chewed out for this, and I did absolutely. But I was able to watch Kazam actually on Disney Plus, and it's you can accept it for what it is. But I was even surprised back in, let's say, maybe 2014 or something, when someone was just telling me about how they liked the movie Shazam with Shaquille O'Neal, and then I was thinking, no, it's Kazam, and that is also something that gets incorporated into these Mandela effect discussions. And overall, I think that that again is just a little bit of a misquote, rather, or maybe if people can actually remember hearing and seeing the images, and then they actually begin to remember that it was Sinbad in the movie and not Shaquille O'Neal, and it's called Shazam and not Kazam. I think that that would fit into the Mandela effect category. But in reality, I think that this one is just like half misquoting and half real Mandela effect. And the last one I wanted to talk to you about was Mickey Mouse's suspenders. Did Mickey Mouse wear suspenders? And this is another very good example of the Mandela effect. If you were to ask me that, I would be like, no, he doesn't wear suspenders. 5 seconds later, I'm thinking, okay, I can visualize it, I can see it, I can understand it now, I can tell you exactly what they look like. But the thing with Disney characters is Mickey Mouse wears pants and gloves, but he does not have any type of shirt or suspenders. Donald Duck wears a shirt, but he doesn't wear pants. And of course, we have to remember the famous line from Chandler Bing on Friends when he said that Donald Duck never wore pants, but when he got out of the shower, he would wrap a towel around his waist. Sometimes Chandler Bing had some very good observations, but they are just cartoons and so on. And no one's ever brought this up in the Mandela effect discussions, but Mickey Mouse, of course, did not always wear gloves. Like, for a while, if people remember Mickey Mouse without gloves, he didn't always wear them. Eventually, he started wearing gloves. I don't remember the exact year, 1932 or something. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. I used to watch a bunch of old cartoons, but that was like, well, decades ago, literally decades ago. Anyway, I do think that that's a good example of the Mandela effect, though, because it shows how there could be this type of collective false memory, but at the same time, it's the important thing. It's just that these are things that seem appropriate, that you can visualize in your mind once you've heard them. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any ideas for future episodes, you can put them in the comments section down below, BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com, and I will see you over on Instagram. Until next time.